Konnichiwa, minasan. O genki desu ka? Welcome to the intermediate course of my channel. Let's learn Japanese with Eric. In this lesson, we'll deconstruct the third conditional conjugation, the ba construction, that we use to make if or when subordinate clauses. Yoroshii desu ka? Hajimemashou. In Lesson 62a, we had a brief introduction of the four ways to form the conditional if or when subordinate clauses in Japanese, to form sentences like, when I graduate, I'll find a good job, or, if the lesson is difficult, it's better to study. This lesson is about the ba method. Just a short reminder that the subject of subordinate clauses frequently takes the subject particle ga, and that of the main clause typically takes the topic particle wa, and that the tense of the verb in the main clause is what determines the tense of the whole sentence, and not the tense of the verb in the ba subordinate clause. So what is the ba conjugation used for? Main takeaways with the ba conjugation are that, like tara, it can be used in many situations, and that the info in the subordinate clause originates from the speaker. This is in contrast with the fourth conjugation, nara, which we'll learn in the next lesson, where the info in the subordinate clause comes from the listener. So how is ba used? There are so many overlaps with the tara conjugation, such as giving judgments or opinions, making volitions, requests, commands, suggestions, advice, and counterfactuals. What is new with ba is that it can also be used to express regret. I wish I had nantoka nantoka. Also, unlike tara, it is more restricted when you use it to make requests, commands, suggestions, and advice. The verb in the subordinate if, when clause must not be an active action. If it is an action, you need to use tara or nara. Like to and tara, ba can be used with verbs, adjectives, nouns, and pronouns. And each ba conjugation has an affirmative and negative counterpart. Before we look at sample sentences, let's see how the ba conjugation is made. Of the four ways to form conditionals in Japanese, the ba conjugation is the most complicated, and you first need to have a good grasp of basic verb conjugation. If you're iffy in this aspect, I suggest you do a quick review by watching lessons 25 to 30. In a nutshell, if the verb is a ru-dropping verb, you drop the ru and add reba. For example, the verb to eat, taberu. Drop the ru to get tabe, and to it you add reba to form tabereba. If you have a category 2 verb, the last hiragana of its dictionary form changes to the e series, and then you add ba. There are 9 kinds of endings, and I'll illustrate each one with a verb. Just pay attention to the endings. Kaku to write becomes kakeba. Oyogu to swim becomes oyogeba. Hanasu to speak becomes hanaseba. Yobu to call becomes yobeba. Yomu to read becomes yomeba. Shinu to die becomes shineba. Tsukuru to make becomes tsukureba. Matsu to wait becomes mateba, and ao to meet becomes aeba. As for the 5 commonly used irregular verbs, here is how they change. Suru to do becomes sureba. Kuru to come becomes kureba. Iku to go becomes ikeba. Aru to exist for inanimates becomes areba, and the verb to be da becomes de areba. And to form the negative conditional, and this rule applies to verbs, adjectives, pronouns, and nouns, the nai form simply changes to nakereba. Nakereba means if or when you do not do, and in some cases it can also mean unless you do. Let's look at examples for each part of speech. Here's an example for an e adjective, atsui, which means hot. Drop the e and add kereba to form atsukereba, if or when it's hot. And the negative conditional would come from the nai form, atsui, atsukunai, and the nai becomes nakereba to form atsuku nakereba, meaning if or when it's not hot. To review basic e-adjective conjugation, you can watch lesson 15. As we mentioned in the previous lessons, na-adjectives are grammatically nouns, so we lump them together with pronouns and nouns. For nouns, the verb we attach is the verb to be, or da, which turns to de areba for the affirmative conditional and dewa nakereba or ja nakereba for the negative conditional. Here's a na-adjective example, shizukana, which means quiet. Drop the na and replace with de areba to form shizuka de areba, which means if or when it's quiet. And the negative conditional would be shizuka dewa nakereba or shizuka ja nakereba, which means if or when it's not quiet. For a review of basic na-adjective conjugation, please see lesson 16. And our pronoun example, watashi or I. Watashi de areba, if or when it is me. And watashi dewa nakereba or watashi ja nakereba, if or when it isn't me. And for our noun, we have hon or book. Positive conditional is hon de areba, if or when it is a book. Negative conditional is hon dewa nakereba or hon ja nakereba, if or when it isn't a book. Let's look at sample sentences. Our first example is of giving a judgment or opinion. The sentence, if you go to Tokyo by Shinkansen, it takes about an hour. In Japanese, Tokyo wa Shinkansen de行けば1時間ぐらいかかります。東京は新幹線で行けば1時間ぐらいかかります。Next example is of volition. If there is time, I'll see a movie. 時間があれば映画を見ます。時間があれば映画を見ます。Another volition example. If you clean your room, I'll give you a toy. 君の部屋を掃除すればおもちゃをやります。君の部屋を掃除すればおもちゃをやります。Our next example is a request. If it's cheap, please buy it. Remember that with ba, when forming requests, commands, and suggestions, the verb in the subordinate clause must not be an action. So the first part can be a stative verb, spontaneous verb, adjective, pronoun, or noun. In our example, this is acceptable because cheap is an adjective. In Japanese, 安ければ買ってください。安ければ買ってください。Our next example is a command. If you like to try, try it. In Japanese, 食べてみたければ食べてみなさい。食べてみたければ食べてみなさい。Now you may wonder, isn't eating an active action? Yes, but grammatically speaking, the Thai conjugation turns verbs into adjectives. So, 食べてみたい or want to try eating is technically an adjective, and its conditional is 食べてみたければ if you want to try to eat. So this is perfectly okay here. You can review the Thai or want to do conjugation in lesson 47 and the te miru or try to do conjugation in lesson 49. In this example, we have a request sentence, and the V1 or verb in the subordinate clause is an active verb. The sentence, if Keiko makes sushi, please prepare wasabi. Using the ba conjugation in Japanese, Keiko ga sushi o tsukureba, wasabi o junbi shite kudasai. Keiko ga sushi wo tsukureba, wasabi wo junbi shite kudasai. The verb in the subordinate clause is an active verb, to make, so we cannot use the ba conjugation for this. Instead, we can use the tara conjugation and say, Keiko ga sushi o tsukuttara, wasabi o junbi shite kudasai. Keiko ga sushi o tsukuttara, wasabi o junbi shite kudasai. We have a set phrase for asking or giving suggestions or advice using the ba conjugation. What should I do? どうすればいいですか? どうすればいいですか? Remember that we had a similar construction with tara. どうしたらいいですか? The difference is that the ba construction is more polite and unassuming. どうすればいいですか? It's better to exercise. 運動すればいいです。運動すればいいです。It's better if I can go home early. 早く帰れればいいです。早く帰れればいいです。帰れれば comes from 帰れる, which means can go home. It is the shortcut ability of the verb 帰る to return home. You can review making the ability conjugation in lesson 57. Unique to the ba conjugation is expressing regret. I wish I had. And it's very easy to make. Compare the following. 早く来ればいいです。早く来ればいいです。Here we have advice. It's better to come early. Now if you change the e to the past tense, it becomes 早く来ればよかったです。早く来ればよかったです。The past tense よかった turns it into regret, and now the sentence translates to I wish I had come early. Often we add kedo or ga or noni at the end of the sentence to reinforce the nuance of regret. 早く来ればよかったですけど. Last function of ba is in making counterfactual statements. These are sentences that reflect what could have been. Example, had Jiro quickly taken medicine at that time, he would have probably gotten well quickly. In Japanese, Jiro-kun wa ano toki sugu ni kusuri o nomeba hayaku naotta deshou. Jiro-kun wa ano toki sugu ni kusuri o nomeba hayaku naotta deshou. Our verb to is in the past tense naotta, healed, and we add an expression at the end that reinforces the fact it didn't happen. Say that of probability, deshou, probably, or noni, although. We will take up these expressions in a future lesson. Now let's look at the restrictions of using the ba conditional. First one is that if the main verb is a request, command, suggestion, and the like, the verb in the ba clause cannot be an active verb. Next restriction is that the main verb can't be in the past tense unless the sentence is counterfactual. We already saw this in a previous example. And the third restriction is that if both verbs are in the past and the verb in the ba clause is a single past event, then we can't use ba at all. We need to use the tara conjugation. First restriction is that if the main verb is a request, command, suggestion, and the like, the verb in the ba clause can't be an active verb. Our example, お酒を飲めば運転してはいけない。お酒を飲めば運転してはいけない。Our V2 is 運転してはいけない. You're not allowed to drive, which is a prohibition. And our V1 is 飲めば, if you drink, which is an active verb, and this violates the restriction. We can fix this by using the tara conjugation instead, and say お酒を飲んだら運転してはいけない。お酒を飲んだら運転してはいけない。If you drink, you're not allowed to drive. The てはいけない conjugation expresses prohibition, and you can review this in lesson 38. Next restriction is that the main verb can't be in the past tense unless it's a counterfactual sense. For example, 暑くなければ冷房つけなかった。暑くなければ冷房つけなかった。We have a ba construction, 暑くなければ, in the subordinate clause, with the past tense verb つけなかった in the main clause. This isn't allowed unless the sentence is counterfactual, contrary to fact, and to make it counterfactual, we add a probability expression in the end, だろう, probably. And so the sentence becomes 暑くなければ冷房つけなかっただろう. And the sentence translates to, if it weren't hot, I wouldn't have turned on the air conditioner. And now it's a true counterfactual sentence. And the last restriction, you can't use the ba conditional if you have a single past event in V1 and V2 is also in the past tense. For example, this sentence, when I rested a little, I became energetic again. Our V1 rested is one event in the past, and our V2 became is also in the past. In this case, we can't use the ba conjugation at all. So to say, 少し休めばまた元気になった would be ungrammatical, and we can fix this by using the tara conjugation instead and say 少し休んだらまた元気になった。少し休んだらまた元気になった。Now, do you remember that with tara, we can't have V2 in the past unless it were an action not done on purpose by the speaker? This is perfectly acceptable because 元気になった is a spontaneous action and not an action intentionally done by the speaker. Another way to fix the previous sentence grammatically would be to replace the ba conjugation and use toki instead and say 少し休んだ時また元気になった。少し休んだ時また元気になった。Right after I rested a little, my energy came back. Now the sentence is grammatically acceptable. You can review how to use toki in lesson 61. Still, another way to fix the previous sentence grammatically would be to convert it into a non-past sentence. That way you keep the ba construction. For example, if we change natta to naru desho, the sentence becomes 少し休めばまた元気になるでしょう。少し休めばまた元気になるでしょう。Now the sentence is grammatically acceptable, but the downside is that you definitely changed the meaning of the sentence from something that happened in the past to making it a non-past opinion. That if I rest a little, I'll probably get back my energy. Many proverbs use the ba construction. For example, sumeba miyako, sumeba miyako. Literally, it says that if you live in a place, that place becomes like the capital city, meaning there's no place like home. Another proverb, chiri mo tsumoreba yama to naru. Chiri mo tsumoreba yama to naru. Even dust, when piled up, can become a mountain. Another one is kusuri mo sugireba doku to naru. Kusuri mo sugireba doku to naru. Medicine, when taken too much, becomes poison. And owari yokereba subete yoshi. Owari yokereba subete yoshi. If the ending is good, then everything is good. In other words, all's well that ends well. To summarize, with a ba conjugation, the information in the subordinate clause originates from the speaker. This is in contrast with the fourth conjugation, nara, where the information in the subordinate clause comes from the listener. The ba construction has many overlaps with tara, but has more restrictions. Ba can be used to make judgments and opinions, express volitions, make requests, commands, suggestions, and advice, as well as express counterfactuals. The major restriction with ba is that when making requests, commands, and suggestions, V1 must not be an action. An additional function of ba, not found in tara, is the expression of regret. I wish I had. So this ends our lesson on the ba construction. I'll see you next in the nara conditional conjugation. Otsukaresama deshita. If you're serious about becoming fluent in Japanese, it's important to practice daily, learn grammar, and build up vocabulary. My whole course is designed to give you a strong basic foundation in the Japanese language that you can build solidly upon. So please click like, share, or subscribe and watch the next video in the series. Nihongo no benkyou ni ganbatte kudasai. じゃあ、またね。